Hey guys, how's it going? So this is my Valentine's date. It's going to be a short-lived romance, unfortunately, because the Alpina D3 goes back tonight. I've had a fantastic 6 days in this car. It's really proven to me and cemented the fact that it is just such an all-round weapon. It is the car that does everything, and I certainly love cars like that. I've always loved fast estates. As a mountain biker, they're just so practical. I think they look great. I think the 3 Series Touring has always looked great. Even the sort of E30 shape was just fantastic. I loved them, and I've always loved Tourings ever since. They've just been the best, I reckon, one of the best looking BMWs. I know Tourings and estates and whatever are probably more of a blokey car than I know chicks don't really tend to dig estates. They like their 4-wheel drives or their sports cars and stuff. But I guess, yeah, from a man's point of view, without sounding sexist, they just encapsulate so many things. They're just such an awesome all-round piece of kit. They're a weapon. Whether they're a 320 diesel that's economical but practical, or something like this, or an RS4 C63 that's beyond just being a practical shape. It just combines so much, this car. It really does. The standout features for me, well, there's lots. The ride, this has got the optional 20-inch wheels on it with, I think they're 25 profile Michelin Supersport tyres on there. So there's no cushioning coming from the tyres whatsoever. There's very little wheel travel, and you can see that just looking at the wheel arches. There's hardly any space between the tyre and the top of the arch. Yet somehow Alpina have managed to put a suspension system in this car that gives you a better ride than any other 3 Series I've been in. In fact, pretty much any 5 Series as well. And I'd go as far as saying that the ride in this car over small bumps is as good as my 7 Series. It suffers over bigger stuff only due to lack of travel. But again, when I say suffers, it's better than any other 3 Series I've tried. So I think if I was to have one of these, as good as the optional 20-inch wheels look, I think I'd even go for the 19s that would give you that tiny bit better ride again, which would just make the ride exceptional. It has, it does crash over a few bigger bumps. It runs out of travel, but again, these bumps would have, made my M135 crash as well over. I'm talking crash as in bottom out, not as in crash into a tree or something. So yeah, the suspension is amazing, and you realise that from the go. You just, the roads around me are terrible. They're full of potholes this time of year. Everything's cracked up, but this thing just irons everything out so well in drive. Then you put it in sports, and of course it stiffens up a lot, and it turns into a real sports car. And I guess that's what the attraction of this car is over, say, a C63 or an RS4, whatever. When you're in drive with the 8-speed, it's just, it's constantly, it's changing gear. You're using the torque. You're never doing more than 1,500 revs. You can't even hear the engine if you don't want to. It's just silent. As fast as you want it to be, or as slow and cruisy and comfortable as you want it to be. This thing pulls off the lights so smoothly. It's got the ZF 8-speed, but Alpina have played with that box. They've improved it. Apparently they've put their own solenoids and stuff in there, so it pulls away from the lights smoother than my 7 Series. It just does everything a little bit better. It's almost like you get in this and you're like, okay, it is like, it's familiar. It's like a BMW, but it's like, wow, this is like, this is a very special BMW. Someone spent a lot of time tweaking everything on it, and Alpina they've spent a lot of time. The steering is amazing and direct, and even the steering wheel, aside from the fact that it is the older wheel, which is not the most attractive wheel, especially when you're used to the newer M Sport wheel like in my M135. But if you ignore the way it looks and the fact that it now comes with paddles, which are so much better than those silly buttons that they had before, the feel of it is just, oh, it's so lovely and thin, and the Alcantara, and it's made me want to get an Alcantara wheel for my M135. And it's not just because it looks sporty, it's the way it feels. You know, you close your eyes and this is one of the best feeling steering wheels, and it makes, you know, it makes throwing the car around so much easier. The Alcantara is fantastic for that. Cold, hot, whatever, like just the grip is there, it's fantastic. So yeah, so the ride, the handling, you know, in turn is improved, and just the steering feel on this car. I haven't driven an LCI 3 Series, so I can't compare it, but I've driven a lot of the F30s and stuff. So and this, like I said, this handles and handles better, the ride's better. The engine is just superb. I mean, I've gone on about that before. It's just unbelievable. And the way it revs out, I mean, I've never been in a diesel that there's a rev limiter in this thing at 5,500 revs. A rev limiter. Yeah, most diesels will get just above 4.2, 4.3, and they won't rev anymore because diesels just aren't, you know, they're not designed to rev out. That's not the point of a diesel. It's, you know, it's torque and whatever. But this thing, with its turbos and its Alpina tuning, it revs to 5.5 before the limiter kicks in. I think it would happily rev to 6,000. And you know, between 4 and 5.5, it's still pulling hard, which is just unheard of, you know. So it's almost petrol-like in the way it revs. Now, the few things that I'm not so keen about in this car, and this is an honest review, you know, like Alpina are amazing to give me this car, but I'm just putting it out there, and it's only a couple of things. And let's face it, every car on sale today has negative points. First one being the steering wheel that I've mentioned. It would be nice if it was the newer M Sport one with the Alcantara wrap, but no big deal. You forget about that within the first 2 minutes of driving the car because it feels so good, and you just don't care because it's just superb. The other thing is, so the interior trims, I've talked about these before. They're beautiful. That, you know, the leather wrap dashboard, you know, detailing the doors and this special leather, and it's lovely, really nice. The problem with it is it shows up. It's like going out and wearing a really expensive suit, but then putting a worn out pair of trainers on. Well, that's maybe a bit harsh, but my point is that the plastics here in the middle, especially this bit here down here near the gear selector, it's the same bit of plastic that's in a basic 1 Series. It's the same bit that's in my 135. It's the same bit that's in all 3 Series. It's not a particularly nice piece of plastic when you sit in a 118i, but when you get in, especially this one that's, you know, near enough a 70 grand car, and it's surrounded by this beautiful Alcantara and the leather, hand stitched leather, and you've got the Alpina, you know, badge there, number 139, etc. Blah blah blah. This plastic really does stand out to me, anyway. It's just like, and the plastic around the vents, and so if I was speccing one, I wouldn't, as nice as the leather dash is and stuff, I wouldn't go too crazy on the interior trims. Well, number one, to keep the cost down, because, you know, I haven't personally got loads of money to throw at things like that. And number two, because I think it just shows up the cheaper parts within the cabin, or not the cheaper parts, the more standard, your standard 3 Series and 1 Series parts. So that's that. And the other thing is, my third minor niggle is the sound. Now, it's a great sound, don't get me wrong, and anyone who hasn't driven a 6-cylinder diesel, I've mentioned this in my 7 Series video, you know, they're fantastic. It sounds like almost sounds like a V8, but it's just not loud enough. And I'm not meaning to sound like a boy racer, but my 7 Series on full chat actually pumps out a better sound through the cabin than this thing. I think it does, or very close. There's not much in it. Now, I've driven a 640 Grand Coupe, and that in sports, and fair enough, I'm sure it's acoustics pumped around the cabin, but that makes a better sound than this. full chat. It really does. Like, it pumps the sound through the cabin, whereas this one is a bit more subdued, a bit less noise. Especially, you know, you've got the amazing Akrapovic exhaust in the back, which some people like and some people think is too much. I think it's special. I think it really sets the car off, and it gives the rear end a really aggressive look. But it's just a shame that it doesn't put out, you know, a bit more noise in the cabin. And I know it's really hard. You know, we're talking turbos and we're talking diesels, so you know, it's hard to produce a really sort of sexy sound from both of them. But like I said, I have heard it in the 640. That's the you know, the sort of the top of the range 6 Series diesel. And a friend of mine who I took for a passenger ride the other day said he'd had a 335D, and he was certain that the 335D actually made a sort of a more muscly sound as well. So, but you know, don't get me wrong, they're the 3 little niggles and complaints I have about an otherwise 99% perfect car. You know, I really can't fault this car, and some of those, you know, like I said, the trim thing can be fixed just by not going too crazy with the really nice leathers and stuff. I think the interior would be a perfect place to be, and it wouldn't show up the cheaper bit of plastics. The sound, who knows? Someone might come up with a, you know, they might be able to program a nicer acoustic sound in the cabin or whatever. But maybe that's not what you're after. If you're after a brash, loud sounding, you know, V8, then go and buy a C63. But I think the whole point of this car is it just does everything so well and with so little fuss, and so little running costs. You know, I was talking to someone on social media about this the other day. Yes, you can go out and buy a C63 estate for 60 grand. You know, and it's still 10 grand more than this, but it's not a great deal more, you know, it's 20% more. So I'm sure someone who was looking at one of these could potentially look at a C63 as well. But it's those people that are like stretching their budgets. When you look at the running costs of this compared to a C63, you're looking at less than half the running costs, I would estimate. You know, it's twice as efficient, if not more. It's, you know, the road tax is half. The insurance is less. The servicing cost is less. It would, I'm guessing, chew through less tyres, but that's probably a bit of a here or there comment, I guess. But yeah, and also the depreciation. You know, the Alpinas are so rare. I mean, the C63s, they don't, you know, they're not going to lose 20 grand overnight at the moment because they're quite a new product, but down the track, just like the previous C63 or RS4, they're big sellers in the UK, so therefore the second-hand market starts to flood and you know, residuals drop. So whereas on one of these, they're so unique and rare that they kind of tend to hold their value. And then as we're talking about rarity and specialty, these are so special. I've spent a few days in town with it, you know, car washes, wherever I go, people come up and talk to me about it. You know, it's a friendly car. If I was in an M3 or an M4, for instance, I doubt anyone would come up. Maybe in an RS3 or RS4, sorry, or C63, possibly, I don't know. But this, especially with the sticker kit, the exhaust, people are like, really, especially other BMW owners, they're either intrigued or they're just excited to see an Alpina, and they literally come up to you and they're like, oh, you know, I haven't seen one of these for ages, or I didn't know they still made them, or, you know, oh, I was dying to see one. And yeah, and that just makes it, but you don't feel like, you know, I've driven Ferraris and Porsches and whatever around town, and you feel like a bit of a, you know, penis. Sometimes you feel like you're showing off without meaning to, you know, even if you got it for a few days and it's great and you're enjoying it, but you do feel a bit like a cock. Whereas in this car, you don't at all. And yeah, it still attracts all the attention, but in a much nicer way. People don't look at you and go, oh, look at him, like penis extension or whatever. They look at you and they're like, oh, wow, Alpina. And literally, you know, everyone does look at you, so it attracts attention, but in a nice way, not in a look at me, I've got loads of money, or you know, whatever. So yeah, it's unique in that sense, and yeah, I mean, you can't argue. 50 grand. I'd have the limited slip diff for sure. Otherwise, you know, the car comes with Dakota leather. It comes with LED headlamps. It comes with heated seats. You know, they're the three main things that most people want. It comes with the automatic, fantastic automatic ZF8 speed that they've tweaked. It comes with adaptive suspension. I'm probably going to miss a load of things that it comes with, but on top of that, I'd have the limited slip diff, just because this, you know, the 5-6 days I've had in this car have been damp, wet days, and wow, that diff has just transformed this car. It's made it. Now I understand limited slip diffs. I understand what they do and what they give. I really do, and I think it's yeah, they just give so much to the car. They make this car such a well balanced, stable, unbelievable sort of driving tool. So I'd have that, and I'd have the Pro Nav. I wouldn't have the stickers around the side, just because I know over time they'd start peeling off and looking scat. So I wouldn't have them, but I'd have the Alpina badge on the front splitter. I'd debadge it on the back, of course, like all my cars. And probably an upgraded sound in here, and that's it. You know, I'd love the roof, but that's an extra two. You know, you can keep going on and on. I think the LSD, what's that, 2 grand? The Pro Nav, I think, is 1,500 quid or something. Upgraded sound. I'd spend 4.5, 5 grand in options, and that's it. Boom, you know, done. And it just, yeah, it would just be, yeah, it would be a dream car. I think if you had 100 grand to spend on a couple of cars, you know, and you'd have something like a Cayman S, or Cayman GTS, and one of these. You know, what more? Seriously, what more would you want? You know, that they both cover everything. They both cover just about everything. Okay, maybe it hasn't got the all-wheel drive sort of capabilities, and on a snowy day, both your cars would be locked up in the garage. But otherwise, yeah, it's just superb. And I really thank you, Alpina, for Alpina UK, Sytner up in Nottingham, for, you know, letting me have this incredible vehicle for almost a week. I've